This is Magnum CK, and as long as you're listening to Wrestling Cheers, you will be sports entertained!
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You want to go where you can see that troubles are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows your name.
And welcome back to Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, especially when you are sports entertained. This is Wrestling Cheers, where we like to talk about things going northeast of our independent wrestling scene. We used to preview shows, we used to review shows, but now, until the end, we're just going to have interviews along the way. On this episode, we are interviewing Magnum CK. I'm your host, Justin Summers, and Wrestling Cheers is brought to you by Midwest Territory. Please rate, review, and subscribe your Everlist's fine podcasts, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, or Podbean. WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers, Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers, Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. Email, if you so choose to desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. Like I said, this is an interview with Magnum CK, and he is back after a long hiatus here on the show. We got him back. Magnum, how's it going today?
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, I lost you. Sorry about that. Just cut out for a second.
I went through my intro and I was bringing you on, so.
Oh,
yeah.
My bad. Sorry, it cut out.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, hey, listen. Yeah, I'll just hop right into it. This is the first wrestling podcast that I have done in probably 3 years. I think the last one I did was Marty and Sarah in 2020 when Magnum's Opus first came out. So you're catching me at the beginning of a run, and I'm catching you at the end of a run.
And ironically, too, we can just jump right into this, too. I was supposed to interview you right after that. You did Marty and Sarah.
Yeah, that was like pandemic lockdown era. I think everything on the planet fell through the cracks right about that time.
Yeah.
I have a strange listen. I wish there had never been a pandemic ever, obviously, but I do have a strange bit of nostalgia for that weird moment of time, I guess, because I was fortunate enough to not, be a necessary in-person person for a while. Mm-hmm. I was teaching at the time, but like we weren't back yet. So there is a weird little soft spot in my heart for that lockdown summer where it just felt like nothing mattered.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed like not being able to do anything. Like I like doing things, but just being like, I can stay home and like maybe we'll do a marathon of like some movies, or we'll like do this or that. Oh, yeah. Like there was this like cool to be home thing.
I caught up on everything. I read like 40 books. Like I was like living my best vacation life, and then like everything opened back up, which again, I'm also glad about. But the funny thing about it is, I know I'm not sure exactly what we'll get into, but like when I got my official like injury official diagnosis at the end of 2018, it was right around the Harley Race show. God rest his soul, in early 2020, that I was essentially, I mean, as cleared as a doctor will clear you. I mean, because I made a surprise appearance at AIW after I helped out with one of their tryout days and did like a character and promo workshop for them. I had a little surprise cameo before the show, and we were talking Absolution, like honestly, like we were like Danhausen was there, and we were pitching all kinds of stuff to Thorne and other people. And I had just found out, like, yeah, you avoided surgery. I did physical therapy for forever. Mm-hmm. And they were like, listen, like, because again, no doctor's ever going to be like, yeah, go pro wrestle. But they were like, there's no sign, your fractures are healed and you're back to normal. Which was not the initial diagnosis. That's not what I was told. That was not even possible from what I was originally told. And So if not for the pandemic, I probably would have been back around ABSO in 2020. And then the pandemic happened, and then life happened, and then here we are, 3 years after that, and I'm finally getting my busy, lazy ass back to work.
What I'm hoping with your injury and everything, that like now that it's even had even more time to heal. I mean, obviously you said you got cleared, back in 2020, and even when that happened, we were like, a lot of us fans were talking like, is Magnum gonna come back, or was him just saying like, oh, I'm cleared, just saying like, right. Hey, just for the show, yeah. Because that was also
again, I had several appointments after that just to check in and stuff, because I'm a little bit neurotic about health stuff anyway. But dude, I mean, it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal because one thing that I don't think people know is I only had a year run in AIW, which is just like, to say that is mind-boggling because it feels like such a part of who I am, especially as pertains to wrestling. I was just talking to John today, and I was like, "Man, listen, I'm an AIW guy, like in my heart. Like as soon, like I just am so excited, and I'm just champing at the bit, but like to help in any way that I can and be a part of it. But like I hurt my back the week before I debuted at AIW in the match. I'd already been a surprise and helped Frankie beat PB Smooth, but the week before my match, I was trying out some new spots and stuff the week before AIW at a little local show, just to kind of work out some of the kinks on a few things. So I've never had an AIW match where I was 100%. And of course I didn't know that, I just thought, I hurt my back a little bit. I'll be fine. And then it just kept getting worse and worse over the course of a year. But I'm excited to finally be at 100% health and just hopping into AIW again. How
did that return feel for you?
I'll be honest with you, buddy. And I'm not saying this to sound like a jackass. I don't get nervous about a lot anymore. I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm like some special person or like I don't take anything seriously, but like I get excited. Mm-hmm. That's the same feeling in your brain. So I'm usually like, when I was doing all my stuff at Second City, and even this past weekend, I did a big show here and a couple of comedy shows last week. One huge one and one very challenging one. Both times I was more excited than I was nervous. I was so nervous, not because I didn't think I could perform, because I've been training for months in Columbus with my friend James at his wrestling school. And I had a bunch of training matches. I've worked out a lot of bugs and kind of gotten the rust off and got that first bump out of the way, and then I'm in shape. I'm in some of the best cardio shape of my life. And I was 0% nervous about the performance. I knew the little story we were going to tell with Derek. I knew everything, every spot. But I was so nervous that enough time had gone by that music would play and I would step out and it would be like, oh yeah, hey, who is that guy? Like it would be like a little murmur of like, why is this guy acting like he's a big deal? You know what I mean? Like it's like anytime I debut in a new place, because I do the same grand, it's not exactly the same all the time, but I do the same big grand entrance everywhere I go, especially if I'm a heel.
Yeah.
And when I debut at a new place, the first couple shows feel a little weird because they're like, what the fuck's this guy? Like, what's he doing? Like, why is he walking out here like he literally owns all of this? And then after a few shows, I've either endeared myself or pissed them off or whatever, and then I get a reaction. But I was so petrified that I would walk out there and it would be a lackluster reaction. Mm-hmm. And I will not name who it was, just because I'm not in the shit stirring business. But when I was on my first AIW run, I mean, have been there for all of it. I've always I've been very fortunate. I was booked very strongly, and I do believe I worked very hard to stick out, but like I always got great reactions, like everywhere, every time I came out, and part of it was just that pomp and circumstance of taking my time, revealing myself, popping my nose up in the air like I'm somebody. I mean, that's most of it, right? I mean, that's 90% of what I am. But there was one person, he's no longer around. I don't even know if he's in the business anymore, but he used to find me backstage and be like, yeah, they didn't pop as hard for you this time, huh? Like, wow, I guess the run's kind of runs over, huh? And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, first of all, why would you ever say that to somebody? And secondly, like, dude, I barely know you. Like, thanks, dude. Like, what the hell? So that was in the back of my mind. I was like, if this, and I hate to say this, but like if that had been a dud, if I probably just would have been like, yeah, this is a bad idea. Like, I'm not going to do this, which is a stupid, petty way to think. But I think there was probably a part of me that was like, all right. And then so the music hits at Gauntlet and there's no reaction. And I'm like, fuck. Oh my God. Every fear of all time is like now every abandonment issue from my parents, like every single like crappy thing anyone's ever said to me backstage out of pettiness is just come crashing down and my world is over. And then I like snuck my hand with the cape like out the curtain and then the roof blew off and I was like, oh, they just weren't sure which one of us it was. Okay.
Yeah. And I think too, because I recorded it in January, but I think I posted it in March. I sat down with Frankie and
gotcha.
I know he wanted to be some sort of surprise. And I I did push to a person or two about getting him on, but I heard that they wanted, that the push was going for Dr. Dan, which I'm like, all right, fine. But when I hear the music, I'm like, I was split because I'm like, is it Frankie? But then the thing that, because I didn't get to interview, I didn't get to review Gauntlet. There was the fact that you rejoined Twitter that week, like a day or two.
I know, and I
before.
almost fucked it up, man. Yeah, like and the reason why I can tell you, and it's very selfish, why I did this, and it sucks because Twitter's jacked up, so I didn't get to keep any of my followers or whatever. But like, so I had to kind of start over. But who cares? It's probably going to be dead soon anyway.
Yeah.
But honestly, the main reason I did that was I wanted anybody who cared or knew or had pictures or responses I wanted to see them. I wanted to be like, because one of my favorite things, and this is a very petty, selfish little thing, one of my favorite things about wrestling, especially at AIW before, was I would leave the building or the after party or whatever, and I would get to like a Sheetz or something, and I'd be waiting on my food, and I would pop on Twitter and just get to see all the GIFs and the pictures and like the selfies that people took with me at the table. So I was like, man, this might give it away. I was like, but I just want that to be out there.
But the way I rationalized it when I first saw it was like, well, maybe he's just getting back on Twitter. Like, people do that all the time. So
sure,
I wasn't 100% sure how things were going. Then,
well, you're obviously tuned in more than most people, though. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like most people wouldn't even think twice about it.
And I'm also kind of looking for stuff like that. Not on purpose, like, oh, like who's going to be the surprise, but it's just kind of how I am, just trying to like figure out certain things. And like, if I get surprised, I get surprised. If I don't, I don't. But sometimes like just creating the moment. And like, that was one of them, because like it kind of does go back to 2020 when you came out. Like, we thought you were going to be back.
That was, honestly, I can say now, I mean, that was the plan. Like, we hadn't set anything in stone, but I was in the ring before the show, and I did the whole tryout with everybody and all that. And Danhausen was right there, and he was like, "Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do a tag match." He's like, "I'll take all the heat," which, because I didn't have the details. I didn't know the full extent to how good I was to go. I just knew that they said that there was no threat anymore. Like, there was no fracture, which of course that will heal, but like there was no stenosis or anything, there was no like constriction of my spine, which was a concern for a while of like, hey, you might eventually need a fusion surgery, which I was like, oh my God, like, no, because my uncle has had like 15 back surgeries from wrestling and car accidents and stuff. So like, I didn't want to go down that road, but like no stenosis, no lingering side effects. I could run, I could sprint again. I used to do, Matt Riddle gave me a great sprint like interval workout that I do still to this day. I was finally running again. I was lifting. Like, one reason why I've always been a very big guy, I've always been 250 plus.
Mhm.
If you look at the AIW run, especially toward the end, I was down to like 225. And that wasn't, I mean, I was in cardio shape for the most part, but I wasn't able to sprint that whole last few months. I mean, I was just doing Stairmaster at slow pace and stuff. I was leaned down, not just because I was on a decent diet, but because I couldn't lift heavy weights. Like, I just couldn't do it. And so I started lifting again. I got my bench press back up over like 350 again. And I was like, okay, all right. And, and so we didn't know the full extent, but Danhausen was ready, baby. Like, I love that guy, but he was ready to take all the heat.
Man, I wonder whatever happened to that Danhausen guy.
Yeah, someday we'll find out. We'll catch up with him, see if he's ever gotten like ridiculously famous or anything. That just like goes to show you that like the era that we had him. Like, I just sat down and like rewatched Magnum's Opus, and that was like before Danhausen really leaned into where he's at now. Because like his face paint is different. Yeah. And it wasn't as like cartoonish or like fun. Yeah. So it's like, man, I mean, I think about it all the time and I know I've mentioned it a ton, where we caught him like so early. Mm-hmm. And anytime like I get a chance to like speak to him, like when he just did Toy Hio back in February, I actually helped out with Toy Hio, and I helped run his booth with him. Like him and Lulu took care of their money because she was there too. But like I helped like take pictures for people and all that kind of stuff. Nice. And like just like to have that kind of like day with him, and like I'm someone that he trusts, like where we were very familiar with each other, and even like through this whole time, like we'll throw lines back and forth here and there. Like I'm always like obviously very supportive of him, and like anything that I see with him, like he does something even bigger or gets more popular, I'm just like, wow, he's one of those that like 100% deserves it. Well, he's put the work in. I mean, it's funny because I'll see him pop up. I'll see Danhausen pop up on something, and I'm like, holy shit, I wonder how he worked that out. And it's like, he just doesn't stop. You know what I mean? Like RJ City is another friend of mine, who's really making a great run right now too. Yeah. But, he said it perfectly, where he's like, he just bets on himself, man. Like, he just doubled down. And like, I don't know. I was off of wrestling, social media for a couple of years, and that's not because I feel guilty a little bit about that, but it's just because it was hard to look at, because it's just, wrestling's been my life since I was 2 or 3 years old, and so to have it taken away was one of the hardest things I've ever personally gone through, or professionally. But I still see people giving him shit on the internet, and like, it doesn't stop him. I mean, he just doubles down on what he's doing, and like, and I think one thing that holds a lot of us back is that fear of being criticized, because if you put yourself out there, that's how you get the big finish line, or or the big reward, or whatever, or the big job, or the whatever but that's also how you get shit on by a bunch of people. So like, that's hard. That's definitely hard. And I'm sure that he has days where it's affected him, but like, he's obviously just put his head down and just kept right at it. I mean, Jesus, how many people could like tear their pec or their, bicep or whatever it was, and probably make more money? Yeah. He was one of those people that during the pandemic was just like throwing out content left and right. And I would run into like people like in like particular Facebook groups that would be like, I'm just now getting in this Danhausen guy. Like, give me all your video recommendations. And I had like ones that I would throw out, like ones that I felt like, these are like the good staples of like, this is when he introduced the teeth. This is when he introduced tequila. Mm-hmm. Here's like this funny video and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to catching Danhausen down the road someplace. I mean, I know obviously we're in different things, these days, but one thing I told him, because I've kept in contact as much as possible, because I mean, we're both living different lives, and he's obviously, a much more sought after commodity these days. But like when he hurt his leg and everything, like, I've been in contact with him here and there, and when he debuted on AEW and stuff like that, like milestones and stuff. And I've always told him, like, man, we've got to do something together again someday. And he always has said the same thing. Like, we will. And I really think we will somewhere, someday. But having my wrestling career back opens up so much hope and fun in my life, and changes my outlook on a lot of things, because, I doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on other things in my life. And I just couldn't look at wrestling. Like, I didn't watch wrestling for the first time in my life, since forever, just because it just was painful to watch. Like, it just was a heartbreak for me. I mean, I tried to keep my head up, and I didn't cry or anything, when I had to go away. And I tried not to be down about it. I tried to put on a positive face. But it was heartbreaking. I mean, it was absolutely heartbreaking, because, to be perfectly honest with you, and this is covered in the documentary you were mentioning, like, 2019 is the year that AIW really, really blossomed, and was also the year that I didn't find out till later, was also the year that they were gonna give me the ball. Like, I didn't find that out until we were shooting the documentary, when John said it. He was like, yeah, we were priming him up for ABSO. And I was like, holy shit. Like, that was one of the worst. That was just as bad to me as the day I found out that when I was told I wouldn't wrestle again, which obviously wasn't true. But when we were filming that documentary, and Thorne said, yeah, this guy, we were going to probably give him Gauntlet, and he was going to make a big run and at ABSO, I was devastated. Like, there was a part of me that wished I'd never heard that, and I'm not blaming anybody, but I mean, like, that was hard. Like, I sat in my car and just depressed after that interview, just because I was like, because again, it's not all about belts. It's not about winning the fucking main event, but like, that's an honor, like, for someone to be like, yeah, this guy got so over. I wasn't supposed to get over. Like, I mean, everyone's supposed to get over, but I was brought in to be one guy's heater, basically. I was brought in to be Diesel, for or Sid or something for Frankie Flynn, and just got over just because I just ran with it. I mean, I just worked as hard as I could and tried to fill that spot as best I could. And to hear that 2019 was the year that, like, AIW started streaming and going, and the big WrestleMania show that year. Yeah. And here I am, Shawn Michaels, ending right before the Attitude Era really kicks off, and the big numbers come in, was just devastating. So I totally removed myself from wrestling in every possible capacity for a long time. And honestly, it was New Japan that really kind of got me back into it. And my childhood best friend died just a little over a year and a half ago. And him dying and me really wrestling with that, pardon the pun, is one of the things that really got me thinking, like, hey man, I think I can do this again, and I think that I should. And I was watching Keiji Muto, Great Muta, do his retirement tour, and I was like, shit, man, like, just watching this epic character that I've loved my whole life, that I have tattooed on my arm, like, make his final run at 60. And I'm not saying I want to be a 60-year-old wrestler, but It was impressive to me, and it really touched me. And then it was literally John Thorne messaging me. I was in Las Vegas with my wife for a trip, and he's like, hey, you want to come out at Gauntlet and get that little popski? And I probably had a drink. I'd probably had imbibed. I was in Vegas, and I was standing on the strip, and I was just like, yeah, man, guys like my buddies like Danhausen, they took a big gamble on themselves. My friend RJ City took a big gamble on himself. All these guys, I mean, Derek Dillinger, Jesus Christ. I mean, that guy has doubled down and taken a big gamble on himself, and it's paid off. And I was like, yeah, you know what, Thorne, like, yeah, let's do it. And let's just not get a pop. Let's start it again. I just said, I started not that Cody Rhodes, I'm not trying to do the Cody Rhodes bullshit. Not that it's bullshit, but you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not trying to say finish the story, but like, that resonates with me, because I had worked so hard, since I was 18 years old to try to get to a point where I could be at a place like AIW just to begin with, and then to work my way up the ladder to almost become like the man.
Mm-hmm.
And then have that stop just short of that actually happening is just like, it just eats you alive. And so from that literal moment standing on Vegas Strip, I was like, I'm gonna run for it again. And I'm not asking for any favors. I'm not asking for any special treatment. Put me on the card and I will get over, and I will make everybody around me look like $1 million and do everything that I can to get that spot back that I was supposed to have.
And I think with like all the time that's passed, and especially with the documentary, you got to like relive that whole run, and then also pick apart things that like maybe next time, like, don't do this, away. Cause it even kind of gets talked about there of like, you get back in it and then you kind of get yourself in the same mesh you did before, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's wrestling's a drug. I mean, it's weird, but it's a drug. And I was finally getting booked at places that I wasn't reaching out to, and I didn't reach out to AIW. I mean, that was an organic, booking as well. But, I was getting called to come in and get paid pretty decently to come in and work the main event and make their guy look good. And like, that's an alluring thing, but it just, it at the end of the day was unsatisfying. I mean, I always had the AIW shows to fall back on for that kind of like dopamine hit of like, yeah, I'm over, this is fun. But like, I was traveling around and just getting the shit knocked out of me by people I was just meeting, 10 minutes before the show, and then would never come back, or would come back 6 months later. And that's cool. And there are a lot of people that do that and they like that. But I'm much more interested in getting a stronger foothold at a handful of places. So like, I've definitely been reached out to by a couple of feds that I want to, but I've told them all the same thing, which is I don't want to come in and just dick around. Like, I want to come in and I want to be booked for several shows, and I want to tell a story or be a part of a story or get a foothold. Like, it's a bit of a different situation. There's always injuries on the horizon. I mean, everyone who wrestles is going to get hurt at some point, but one thing that's changed for me in my life is I don't have this sense of, I don't want to say sense of urgency, but before in my mind, there was always an invisible clock that was ticking down that was telling me like, you've got to go now. You've got to do this shot. You're going to run out of time, or, this ride's going to be over. And that was before I even knew that I was really hurt. I don't really have that now. I'm viewing everything as I'm going to have as much fun as possible. I will never have a retirement show ever again. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be Ric Flair and die in the ring, but like that night will never be replicated. That's my retirement show, and that'll always be the retirement show. And whenever I have my last match, it's just Triple H style. It's just, that was my last match. Oh, well. But I'm just looking at it as, I definitely have goals and I have things that I aspire toward, but they're not fueling me in my belly like this burning fire like they were before, to the point of toxicity. I mean, I wasn't listening to my body. I wasn't listening to my wife. I wasn't listening to my own conscience. I was just go because, oh my God, I'm finally getting recognized. I'm finally getting spots that I've wanted my whole life since I was a kid. And I just flew too close to the sun. I'm a much wiser person now. If I haven't, at that time, I thought before I even knew my back was as hurt as it was, if I had an injury and I had to be out of the ring for 6 months, I would have thought my AIW run is over. No one's ever going to book me again. It's over. I'm done. I know so much better now. I know that sounds so stupid from the outside, but like, if I had my first full match back at AIW and I broke my leg and was out for 3 months, well, I'd just be out for 3 months. I would come back at some point. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have the self-confidence or self-assuredness that I do now. And that's partly because I did have to go away. I did have to get injured. One of the first things that John Thorne said to me was when he gave me, first of all, the best payday I've ever had in wrestling in my entire life. And he didn't have to do. He said, open door policy. You're always welcome here in whatever capacity you want.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And that just comes from not having the self-confidence and not having the self-assuredness to think that anybody could accept me as a person and want me around, and not just when I can do something for them. You know what I mean? And so that's like ingrained in you in childhood. And I like you, like we've talked about, I've had a lot of therapy. I've had a lot of real life happen in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this as like, and I'm not comparing myself to him because he's a much better wrestler than me, but I'm looking at this as the 2002 HBK deal where it's like, hey man, like I'm back and let's just see what happens. Like I feel good. I'm healed. I have a great mindset. I have a great attitude. I have a shitload of experience, and I've had a bunch of new other experiences since this, and I'm ready to be part of the team.
Retire? I thought you went to WCW.
Yeah, I did. I went to WCW, and then Goldberg kicked me in the face and dropped me on my head. So
that's still one of my favorite moments from that whole
yeah
speech.
When I did the air sign WCW, just like when Brett left. Yeah. That was a dream come true. I mean, in what context could you ever do that and then also get a laugh out of it?
That was like in the one group that I'm in, the guy that made your figure, he was in it, and he was like promoting your the figure that he made, and I jokingly put like, I thought that guy went to WCW, and like the artwork does look WCW-ish, and he's like, oh no, this is this blah blah. I'm like, no, I'm referring to like when he had a retirement match, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, that went over my head. I'm like, yeah, I just like, I know Magnum, and that whole thing, like I said, popped me. But it goes like kind of like what you were saying about how you've experienced so much. It's kind of like what I was saying too, of you had those life experiences like in wrestling, you kind of look back, made those mistakes, but then the fact that you were able to like put them together again in Magnum's Opus, it kind of like just really I think I would feel like that just instills it in you more, like you got to look at everything, like revisit all the film and just look at how everything went. And now like you have a second, or maybe even like technically I think third chance, because you were like away for a handful of years, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I was on the kind of backside for a little bit. Yeah. I just had a diversion there, but I've never not been a part of wrestling, you know, except for those couple years, last few years when I've been gone. But you know, the parallels are funny to me because I've been out just about 4.5 years. I just turned 37. I'm just saying, Shawn Michaels, 4.5 years, came back at 37. I don't know, man. That's pretty crazy.
So you're going to get a short haircut. You already have the long tights, so you're going to get like that like shit brown tights. I got it. And that's when you're going to win the absolute title.
Yeah, when I have my shit brown tights that didn't get finished.
Oh man, but
well, I mean, I look at it. I mean, yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. Like, the movie was tough to make, especially because it was during the pandemic when it was edited, and I had to edit a lot more than I originally thought I was going to have to do. And I wanted to pass the footage off to somebody else because I didn't think I wanted to watch it. I'm glad I did it. I had to remove myself from it to some degree, just, you know, in my brain to work on it. And it was a bit like the scene in Christmas Vacation where Chevy Chase is up in the attic watching the old movies. Like, there was a part of me that was watching some of this older stuff and just getting really nostalgic or whatever. And, you know, again, it was right around that time that I kind of found out, oh, okay, I'm good. My first thought wasn't, oh my God, let me hop in a wrestling ring. My first thought was, oh, thank God, I'm fine. Like, I'm okay now. Like, okay, all right, I get it. Because again, the condition that I have spina bifida occulta, which you hear spina bifida and you're like, holy shit, like that's great. It's incredibly common. My friend, he's a wrestler. His name is Vance Desmond. He has it. It's really, really common. Anyone you see with those two little dimples in the bottom of their back, like I have, has it. It's not that it's like some crazy rare thing. It's just that I had a stupid injury and I never dealt with it. And I was a little more susceptible to it because of it. I've in the training I've done since, I've adjusted some things. I'm more aware of it. And it's not something, hopefully that's ever a problem again. And if it is, then I'll just deal with it if it comes up. But, watching that footage, I thought would be like a nice, like, let me close the book. But like, it's just true, man. Like if there's any life, if there's any gas in the tank, if there's any life left over in there, it's just, you can't stop thinking about it. I have a notes app on my phone. I've been taking promo notes for 4.5 years. Like everything, like I have spots in my phone. I have different moves. I have different ideas. I never stopped thinking about wrestling at any point, even when I was trying not to. So that movie felt just like a nice little button on a period of time. And I'm just looking at the rest of this as just kind of icing on the cake. And I think I really, truly feel that some big, cool things are going to happen just because it's like, what's the 38 special? So, like, hold on, because I'm holding on loosely. I'm not like, one thing that people don't know about that original run was, man, I was high strung. I mean, I've always been positive. I'm always trying to be as nice to everyone. It's not phony. It's just, that's the version of myself that I choose to be, as nice and kind and comforting to everybody as I can. But I mean, I was high strung about it. I was really taking that run very seriously, almost to a point where I was blinded. So things feel a lot different now. And having that perspective of being able to look at that movie, that documentary, and look at it all like it is a movie is kind of comforting in a way, because it just felt like, okay, that's a project that happened and we're removed from it now, and we get to do a new project now.
You have no idea how much I can't wait for your first promo back. Because
watch it just be like total shit. Like
no, like, because I've always said that there's like promos I really, really like of people. Like if I were to give someone recommendations, like I always throw out J-Pro. J-Pro's hands down one of my favorites. Yeah. But the one that I'll throw at somebody and it's helped me look at promos just completely different, is how you would do it, because there's some that I vividly remember, whether it be, the simple first one of where you're just eating peanut butter, got the point across, memorable, not a word was said. There was the one that you doing a promo on PME. I think you have two really good ones on PME. One is in the documentary and the other one isn't. The first one, it's on a playground and you find a way to incorporate it, like why you're at a playground. There's another one you're like out in the field, and I think you're like Erotic City is just a little bit that way and everything. And it's just that fact of so many people do promos just like they're always in their living room or they're always in their bathroom, but you found ways to like have them stick out, and like that to me is so important.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, honestly, I approach it from a few different angles, not the least of which just trying to find something that's visually appealing in the background and some depth, because there's nothing I hate more than just a big flat wall behind somebody, or God forbid, a seat belt in a car seat, for God's sake. Not my favorite. But, I've never, and it's probably why I've been decently successful at doing like character and promo like classes with people, is because we've all seen a million wrestling promos, and that's my favorite part. Like I love promos more than watching almost. I mean, I love wrestling, but I love promos the best, especially some of the older ones. But I never approached it like a wrestling promo, because we all know that a wrestling promo is like June 18th, I'm coming down and I'm going to kick your ass and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh God, like, okay, so what? Who gives a shit? Like everyone has said that. Everyone, like, I never wanted it. And going forward, I don't ever want it to feel like it's just because those feel phony. And And some people can do it well, obviously, but I just have never been a fan of doing that in the modern day. I just always looked at them much more like a separate presentation, like a separate moment to like take the mask off and just try to show the character as plainly as possible. Have a couple, one, maybe two little clever ideas, but really just kind of let the rest fall in place. So I put these promos or monologues, as Dom Guarini called them, which I always love that, calling them new monologue instead of new promo. It's way more fun.
Yeah.
The same way I look at putting together a match, I never, ever walk up to another wrestler backstage and say, what do you want to do? I always say, what kind of story do we want to tell? Right? Is it big guy, little guy, overconfident, like whatever, whatever the case may be. I do the exact same thing with a promo, which isn't what's a cool, clever line I can say, and just more like, what do I want to say? What am I trying to get across? And usually it starts, it's just one simple little thing. Like I had one against Andrew Palace one time where I couldn't really think of anything. And then I was like, I wonder if that's his real name. And I wasn't sure because I've known Andrew for a while, but half the time you never learn anybody's real names. And I was like, oh, well, what if I just make that part of the promo? And I was like, the promo just became like, hey, you can call yourself whatever you want, but when the bell rings, there's an X-ray on you and I see exactly who you are. And I know who you are. What are you going to do once you see it? Can you handle it when you know who you are? Shit like that. Like just very simple. So like I've always been very influenced by Raven, like back in the 90s, especially in ECW. And he wrote his a lot more than I do. I try to just have bullet points because I feel more natural that way. But I always liked his promos because they weren't wrestling promos. They were almost like monologues.
I would even say like speeches, because I know when I was in high school, I took a course and there was a part of it where we talked about speeches and basically how to write one. And it was like, don't write line by line. They were like do bullet points, like create an outline. And then like that helps you flow. So in a way, like you mentioned just outline thing, I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of like a speech.
Well, honestly, what made it all click, if there's anything that I do or did from, 2017 on, that was of any value or entertainment, I really give the credit to John Thorne because, before he booked me for AIW, with the production, as a stable, I was just doing everything. I was doing like an 80s thing. I was wearing, you saw me, I was wearing Van Halen tights and like, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And I just couldn't figure it out. And John Thorne, art is discernment. It's just discerning what works and doesn't. And this is why someone like John Thorne's an artist, whether he wants to admit it or not, is because he was like, you're a theater guy, right? And I was like, yeah, I've been doing a theater for like, at that time, like 15 years. And he's like, all right, well, just be like a theater guy. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like that sounds so stupid and simple, but it's like, it never occurred to me to just be like a big dramatic guy. And that freed me up. I didn't have to do the like, hey baby, we're doing the promo, daddy, and here's the date, man. And like, whatever. It was just more like, no, I can do anything.
Yeah.
I could do anything I want because I'm just a dramatic theater type guy now. Bingo.
Was it a combination between Thorne and your wife? Because like she kind of, it sounded like she had some input in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, she had been saying like, you're thinking too much. You're thinking too much. Because like she's brilliant because she's like a good teacher, which is a good teacher will never tell you what to do. They'll just try to lead you that direction and let you figure it out. But yeah, she was the same. And then, and she's always been my litmus test of like, hey, does this make sense? Like, will you watch this? And like, if she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Then I'm like, okay, delete it. Like start over, because she's not a wrestling person. Obviously she's seen a lot of it now, but she doesn't follow it. She doesn't care. So, I've always looked at her as a way to have more appeal on a wider base, a wider audience. But yeah, it's just so funny because the people closest to you are the ones that you'll listen to last sometimes. And it's like, at that time, John Thorne was a stranger. Now he's a wonderful friend. But he was a stranger. And then she's brought that up too. She's like, I was kind of telling you the same thing. And I was like, I know, but it's like when your parents tell you not to touch the stove and you're like, oh yeah, right, old man. And then you touch the stove and you're like, okay, fine. You're right. But I've also grown in that department too. I usually listen to her a lot quicker now.
That's one thing that I really loved about Magnum's Opus. It's like, it's the part with her is I think where it gets highlighted the most, but like it's great throughout the entire thing is like when you have her name and then you like was right. Like those, just some of those, and like every time you see her, like there'll be something else. And then some of the things that like just for like nicknames for somebody like that would pop up. I think the one that I totally forgot about was like somewhere towards the end when all of a sudden like there's these like fake movie titles for matches. Like, because first I was like, there was something for the one with you in RJ City. And I was like, oh, that must have been like what the show was called. And then the next one, there was like an AIW one, and I know it wasn't the title of the show. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's part of the joke. Like, it's just those little small little things. Or even anytime there's a product on the screen, asterisk, not a sponsor.
Yeah, that's probably just me being a bored editor.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's come up a couple of times. I mean, honestly, the documentary was pretty well received, and that was also, I worked on and directed and helped write and produce films that had won awards before, but the awards that we got for Magnum's Opus are a little more precious to me because obviously I didn't do it all alone, but that's a project that I really spearheaded just due to the necessity of the pandemic. And so I didn't start calling myself an award-winning filmmaker until I got awards for that one, because it was the first time I felt like I'd actually earned it.
The thing that I loved was that same week Powerbomb was released. Like I think, I think there was like a couple. Actually, there was I think it was supposed to be a really big, like maybe a week difference, but then like it came out early. Like because I had bought it off Apple, and then a week before it came out, I woke up to a notification. It was like, oh, your purchase of Powerbomb's ready to download. I'm like, what? And I purposely waited for Magnum's Opus to release because I came home from work that day and did a double feature. Sat down and watched.
That's awesome.
I can't remember which order I did it in, but the thing that I liked was yours began with a tribute to Biggins. Powerbomb ended with a tribute to Biggins, and I can't remember. I think I watched Magnum's Opus then Powerbomb, because then like it was like it was bookended. It was either bookended or they were both right in the middle for me. But nonetheless, like that's a fun double feature.
Yeah, that's kind of a serendipitous type of thing. I mean, I still work in film quite a bit, and I'm lucky that I get a living doing a lot of that. But you know, this time around in wrestling, I don't care to film any of it. I don't care to document it. I'm really selfishly doing this one just for the fun and love of it.
So there won't be marking out part 3, kind of?
Oh God, I hope not.
What was
so much work.
What was the original premise of 2? Because I mean, for those who don't know, like, well, there was marking out the original, and then you guys were going to do the sequel, and then everything happened about your diagnosis, and that like shifted what it was going to be about. Yeah,
I mean, that was wrestling. Wrestling was going to be like the through line of the documentary. Just like throughout the movie was the plan. And again, this was all preliminary because, you know, a documentary is a film that you write after you shoot it, you know? Yeah. So, and then the plan was to tell a bunch of smaller stories, you know, like to branch out to some smaller, stories that would be more like 10 to 20 minute chapters of it, you know, kind of elaborating on some of the themes of Marking Out 1, which I think is still on, I'm pretty sure it's still on Amazon Prime. But and then doubling back to some of the people we talked to in that one, but it was really just kind of trying to elaborate on that and also follow me in wrestling. And then, you know, I had my back injury, and that was like, well, I guess we're not making that movie.
Like, I felt like I could tell like the aspects of it were there, like the little bits that were recorded before that was just decided, because there is the part about injuries. Like the crazy injuries that happened. And then there was, there's another thing with art. Maybe it was about comedy wrestling. Like, there's like that whole part of
that's
it.
exactly it. Yeah, because we wanted to touch on that type of stuff, and then that's funny because we tried to keep a lot of it in, but if you watch it now, it doesn't really fit. I mean, it feels a little shoehorned in there, just because we didn't want to lose that, because people gave us their time and everything. But yeah, that's exactly it. The vibe was originally going to be like, here's a spot about wrestling injuries, here's about comedy, and then we had some other Comic-Cons we were going to go to and talk about like some different artists and stuff like that, and touch on some different things. But yeah, just kind of, it never fully got off the ground because I broke my stupid back.
The injury one did kind of fit, but I still love the bit on comedy wrestling because I'm someone who enjoys comedy wrestling, and just RJ saying what he said, and maybe I just forgot about it the first time I watched it, but just saying like when people are like, oh, that's not real wrestling, and it's just like, yeah, like you tell that to people who like look at professional wrestling as like, well, that's not real wrestling. Like, are you listening?
Right.
Are you listening to yourself when you say that?
Well, I mean, I just rewatched that section the other day because I think Mike or someone posted it. The guy I made the film with, but RJ City saying wrestling is inherently hilarious, and like it does, since I had to leave wrestling, I went way deep into comedy. I studied for over 2 years at Second City in Chicago. I did their whole comedy program. I was in their acting conservatory. I performed there for months and months. We had a great show that ran there that was super successful. I've studied at IO in Chicago, at the Nest in Columbus, at Arcade, and performed at all these places. And just last Saturday, I did 30 minutes of silent improv with Chad Damiani from WCW, who's like a big clown. Like he revolutionized, clown and improv in LA, and he's like this legend in the clown world, which I've only ever dipped my toe into, but it's all wrestling, dude. Like they booked me with Chad because he's from WCW, and they knew that I'm a good comedian, a good improviser, and good performer. But I'd never met him. I'd never done 30 minutes of silent improv with a piano player. Like, what the hell are you talking about? And he walked in 15 minutes before the show, and he's like, it's so much like wrestling. This is going to be the easiest 30 minutes of your life. And it legitimately was just wrestling. Like, I mean, we didn't wrestle each other, but I mean, like, the mentality of it, like looking at the audience, messing with the audience, messing with each other, telling a story, having a pattern, breaking that pattern, going back to that pattern, fucking with the piano player just like you'd fuck with the ref or whatever. Like, it was wrestling. So like, I'm not saying that all wrestling has to be comedy wrestling, but if you think that wrestling can't be legitimately, funny and legitimately wrestling at the same time, you're way too narrow in scope and naive, because like RJ said, it is inherently fucking hilarious. One of my favorite quotes of my life that I still say to people all the time was from my friend, former tag partner, Jock Sampson. Because anytime because listen, we take all this seriously. You know what I mean? Like Colt Cabana is successful and was so successful in his career, not just because he was funny, but because he was a good wrestler too. Like he took the wrestling part seriously. He just happened to be fucking funny when he did it. And was good at making that work. So we all do take this seriously to that degree, but anytime some wrestler will be in the back taking his shit too seriously, getting too worked up, getting too defensive, getting whatever, Jock Sampson would always say, motherfucker, you stomp when you punch. You stomp when you punch. You're going to get pissed off at me when you stomp when you punch. And it's like, yeah, I mean, boil it down. It's clown shit.
I mean, you talk about all the stuff you did like after wrestling or during your wrestling hiatus, let's say, because you did, obviously you're back now, but I think that was like a fun thing to kind of watch from the outside, because it's like, hey, I know wrestling didn't work out as much as you want, at least at that point, and just like throwing yourselves at all these things, because I know like how much like theater and comedy and all that means to seeing you, like, dude, like recently you just had that performance in West Virginia where it was like a sold out weekend.
Oh, it was a whole sold out run.
Yeah.
We did The Play That Goes Wrong, and that town had never heard of that show. I mean, it wasn't a popular show. The first night was sold out because it was a buy one, get one half. They always do that. And then the second night was about a half house. And then every show after that sold out because of just straight up word of mouth. Like they were going to add a weekend, but we couldn't get everyone, we weren't all available.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I've thrown myself into these other things. And it's been a challenge. Again, I drove back and forth from Southeast Ohio to Chicago for like 15 months every week, so definitely took it very seriously. But not only did I learn a lot about performing, not only did I get to have a dream, which was, vindication, going to Second City in Chicago and performing on their stages and going through all that training, and the same training that people like Bill Murray did. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. And Steve Carell and these guys, it's awesome to be on the stages where some of those guys were performing is surreal.
Chris Farley.
It just taught me, I'm not trying to be a dick, but it just made me realize that I'm a professional. Like, I'm a professional performer. And like, it took all the things I've done in my life. It wasn't until and I'll just be totally honest with you, because this is a new development. This past weekend, when I did 30 minutes of silent improv with a stranger, I was like, dude, you got this. Like, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. It's just fun. It's just all fun, and it's all bullshit. It was a big light bulb moment. And while all this has been exhausting in a different way than wrestling ever was, just because it's more time commitment and everything else, I'm so grateful that I've done all these things, because it just showed me that I've progressed even more as a performer than I ever thought that I would. And that's not, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm not trying to be full of myself, but it's just personally, it's like I finally, for the first time in my life, feel like I accept myself and I trust myself, and I trust my talent and my knowledge. And that doesn't mean I'm going to waltz into a locker room and be a dickhead and be like, hey kid, what's your finish? I'm going to move, like, whatever. Like, doesn't mean that I'm better than anybody. It just means that I'm better than I used to be, and I'm better than I thought I could be. And that, to me, I don't compare myself to other talent. I compare myself to my past and who I was. And that's like ultimate weight off my back. Like, that feels like $1 million.
Well, good thing that weight's off your back. So we don't.
Really. I obviously can't take it.
Man, going back and forth from Southern Ohio to Chicago, that is a haul.
It was a 16-hour round trip every weekend for well over a year.
I'm gonna guess like that. Was that going through Indianapolis? Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
I roughly know like the way you're going there. Oh, that's just because at least like for us in like Northern Ohio, that, or like especially like being this close as we are to the turnpike, like let's just like get on the turnpike and go. Especially with Easy Pass, like just go. But that, like I
had to get up. I got up about 3 a.m. on Saturday, and I had class at noon in my conservatory, especially when I got into conservatory, which is, I'm sorry, is a big deal. Like, in Chicago, people are like, oh, you did conservatory, but like, it's hard to get into, and it's grueling. It's a shitload of work. And I've never done anything harder than Second City Conservatory in my life, wrestling training included. I mean, it was the most strenuous, crazy, stressful thing. And I would get up at 3 a.m., roll out of bed, hop in my car, drive to Chicago, take my class, get in my car, drive back home, and get home about 1 a.m. So it was about 22 hours door to door. And that's if everything went well. If I got stuck in anything, I mean, it would be 22, 3, 4, 24 hours. Like, it was pretty grueling. But I can tell you that there's not a better feeling than when you're a total zombie and you sit down on your couch and it's 1 a.m. and you're finally able to relax.
Yeah, I think I know that for being over the road. When
you get it. Yeah.
The brief period of time that I've done that, and you finally get home. Or even, I've always said, like, you have your home bubble to where whenever you cross into that bubble, and I'm saying like your hometown, but like when it comes super familiar, that's right. When it's like, well, I'm not home, but I'm close. Like for me, a lot of times it was just like entering the state of Ohio. If coming up 71 and 75, like from Kentucky to Cincinnati, and you just see that you come over that hill and you see like that skyline, and like you're right there. Like to me, like that was always like one of the coolest things. And it's just like, am I close to home? No, but this is like I'm like one step closer.
Right.
So I could imagine.
Well, that's how I mean. That's how I was when I hit the Ohio line. I knew I still had 3 hours left, but when I hit Columbus, I was like, all right, buddy. 55 minutes, 50 minutes, like, come on, rally. And I don't know. I don't know that I would do it again, but I don't regret it. And I'm glad I did it because I think the healthy approach, we all do this stuff for different reasons. My approach at this point in my life is I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this to see what's out there, not just to prove myself or whatever, or prove I don't feel like I need to prove anything to myself anymore, but just more about like, where can we go? Like, what can we do and how much fun can we have? And like, I really think that's, not to bring everything back to wrestling, but that's why I'm most excited about this future. I have a lot of bookings, which I did not plan on, by the way, which is so funny. Because when I told Thorne originally, I was like, I'm really only interested in doing AIW, which is still true. No offense to any other Fed, but AIW, that's for me. That's my place. Yeah. I will take an AIW booking over anyone's wedding or funeral. Sorry. But a bunch of other stuff popped up and I'm like, great. If it sounds like it's going to be fun, hell yeah, I'm in for it. And that's why I think this is going to be some of the best stuff I've ever been able to be a part of, just because I'm not approaching it from, okay, this has got to be good. It's going to be on tape. It's going to be streamed. It's going to be whatever. It's like, no, this has got to be fun. And then it doesn't matter if it's good or whatever, because it's just fun. I
can't wait to see you back at Old. Like I'm not.
Oh, I can't wait. Me and Effie.
I wish I could make it to that show. I'm hoping you're at the extravaganza.
I'm sorry. I'm in New York. I'm in New York with my family for the extravaganza. I really wanted to make it work, but there's I don't know if you know this, but there's a Pokemon Go event happening in New York that I just
gotcha.
My wife and I are doing a Pokemon Go event in New York, but I will say that I'm just I was using shoot names on here. Marion Fontaine is a very close friend of mine, and I plan on attending as many old wrestling shows as possible. This just worked out. A lot of this stuff was planned before I really fully realized that I was going to be like back at it. So I have Detroit with Effie, which I can't wait for. I've been wanting to wrestle with Effie for like 5 years, and apparently likewise, like Effie is apparently excited. So that's cool. It's better than the alternative. I love Effie, and my goal is next year, because old wrestling has that like pocket of time that they do shows. It feels like it's like May to September. I should be on the loop for those.
I'm so looking forward, because that's the thing that I love about Old and in general, and I've said it before about Fontaine, where like the talent that he books is like a little bit of everybody. He's not just pulling like AIW people. He's like pulling people from all these different companies, and he'll get the bigger names like Effie, but then he'll give other wrestlers a shot that most people might not have ever heard of, and that's just what I enjoy. And then like when you get people like, I should say not people like, but like the fact that most people that work there they're doing something completely different. So it's like, it's going to be Magnum CK versus Effie, but it's going to be under Old Wrestling. So it's going to be Bruno versus Effie Davison. So
so it's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
I honestly, Effie has a lot of pull in a lot of places, and Effie is very popular and rightfully so. So I think I have not met Effie in person yet. We've been in touch for years, just sporadically. It was the same with RJ City. Before I ever met RJ City, we were friends online for like 2 years. But I feel like we're going to connect. I feel like we're going to hit it off because I feel like our mindsets are similar. And I really wouldn't be surprised if you so, because I think the money match, Bruno and Effie Davidson, is fun. I think the money match is once people realize that I'm serious and I'm back in it and operating all systems go. I think Magnum CK versus Effie that's a fun idea.
You know what I think the real money match is? And we almost had it. RJ City and David Arquette versus Magnum CK. And if we can't get Frankie, let's get Danhausen.
Oh man, that was I couldn't believe, like, that was so much work to get together because there were 3 different feds involved with David Arquette doing like a shot that weekend. It was like Toronto, Cleveland, and like somewhere in Michigan or something. And it was like splitting up the trans and working out who's going to buy what plane ticket and whatever. And then he fucking booked a movie and had to pull out. But like, we were working on that for months and we finally got it. I mean, so far that Arquette even filmed a promo about it. I don't know what his designs are on wrestling, but at this point, I mean, here's what I've told people. I am excited and ready to work with young talent who, I mean, again, not trying to sound full of myself, but I have a lot of experience. I have 20 years of performance experience. Most of that has been wrestling also. Young people, young talent, whoever they are, other, tag teams, tagging up with young talent, whatever, working with weird booking. I'm excited about every single type of thing I can be booked for. I'm ready for it because I feel like I just want wrestling for me going forward to be just a weird ass variety show of just like, they're doing what? Like, oh, like, cool. They got him with Hardway. Okay. That's cool. That'll be interesting. Big young guy and CK. That's fun. Or like, also like Lord Zoltan still wrestles. What the fuck? Like, I mean, like I want all of it. Like, bring me every weird booking possible.
With the time you had away too, and you kind of like talk about it in between, whether it be just Magnum's Opus or the actual speech that it came from, your retirement speech, mental health. How has that strengthened you during this time?
It's been important. I mean, honestly, I haven't spoken well, and they haven't spoken to me. My parents haven't spoken to me since spring of 2018, and it's Papa Shango's fault. Not really. It's indirectly Papa Shango's fault. We did that deal with Papa Shango where we did the Voodoo Ooze and everything, and there were a bunch of online wrestling articles or companies that wanted to write articles about it. So I got a lot of interviews out of that. Was very grateful. It was a very cool time. And one of the things I mentioned in one of the interviews was that I grew up in a very, very poor household. And one thing I didn't think of, I don't have a close relationship with a lot of my family. And especially my nuclear family from when I was a kid. But I didn't think of the ramifications of that. Like I didn't zoom out and see that seeing your son say on an international publication, yeah, I grew up very poor, might hurt someone's feelings, even though it's the truth.
Yeah.
So there was a falling out from that. And especially with my father, who told me that he didn't want to ever speak to me again because he didn't feel that was the truth. But frankly, it was. I mean, I grew up in an incredible. I grew up in a trailer in the woods in West Virginia. I mean, incredible poverty, and an abusive household. And a household where I wasn't not just not supported, but actively, it was in an actively domestic violence, domestic abuse household. And, I didn't get my shit together until I was probably 30 plus. I mean, I'm 37 now. So I started therapy when I was about 29 or 30. And that's when I got all my diagnoses, like, hey, you have ADHD. Well, that makes sense. Hey, you have OCD. Well, shit, that makes sense. Hey, you have catastrophizing anxiety. Well, I figured that one at least, I could have pegged that one. But therapy, and I've made the rounds with different medications for sure. But that therapy and a healthy relationship with my wife, have been the building blocks of everything. And I wouldn't have done Second City. I wouldn't have a great job. I wouldn't have a wonderful family and a home and all these things that I get to do if I didn't get my foundation together. And I'm a bit sad sometimes that it wasn't until I was about 30 that I started to finally get the support that I needed to not just thrive, but to just survive. But I'm also grateful because some people never get it. So I'm not going to sit here and tell everyone they've got to take, pills and see a therapist 5 times a week. But I didn't go 5 times a week, but having therapy for years and getting to build up my mental health and really have a better perspective on what it means to just be an adult and understand. The big breakthrough for me in therapy, and I remember the day, I don't know the date, but I remember the day very, very vividly, was when I finally realized and said out loud, holy shit, I'm just normal. Like, this is normal. Because I always thought I was messed up. I always thought, oh my gosh, these things that are wrong with me and on. And then the big breakthrough, and my therapist said she had a 1,000-watt smile when I said it, because she's like, this is what I wait for. This is why I do this, because when a client finally gets to the point where they realize that they're not abnormal, there's nothing wrong. I mean, we all have our things, but we're just normal, and this is all normal, is like the biggest breakthrough of your life. So pursuing therapy, doing that hard work, struggling and failing, and finally getting to the point where you can see the faults in yourself and not beat yourself up for them, but just notice them and pivot, or notice them and relax and let them pass. Shit happens, feelings happen, things fall through, whatever. That is it's the only fight worth fighting in your life is just fighting for yourself. And once you realize that fight is not abnormal, and that everyone that is going through some version of that fight, is when there's a light bulb and you're like, oh shit, I'm good. I'm fine. And there's going to be a day, maybe next week, maybe today, maybe tonight, where I'm not fine. And that's fine, because it's just going to pass, and it's going to, you're going to be fine.
I think with me, cause I don't know if I've talked about anything on this podcast. We talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but I do counseling, and for me, it's helped with, sometimes just having somebody that's not necessarily as connected to bounce things off of.
Yeah,
with.
That's exactly it.
Like, I've taken to my counselor, issues I've had in my life, like some older, some even recent, like one I'll openly talk about here is, sadly, right before my wedding, like literally a few months before, the guy that I considered my best friend and was supposed to be my best man stopped talking to me.
Yeah.
Wouldn't respond to text messages, didn't answer a phone call. And I actually had to make a change. Luckily, I had someone in the wedding party that was just as close. Actually, I had a few people that were like my best friend in like the same group, and I wanted to have 2 best men, but I'm like, I'm just going to pick the one. So when he had that thing happen, or where he just like stopped talking to me, I was able to pivot, and I wasn't going to counseling at that time, but I was able to sit down with my counselor once I started going and just be like, this is the story, blah, 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 blah. And I'm now to the point of does it frustrate me a little? But at the end of the day, I look at it as, you know what? If that's how he was going to be, then I shouldn't necessarily mourn the friendship. It's just hey, it's done. It sucks. just move on.
Yeah. Well, and that's a situation. I've had that happen to me when I got, it's funny how parallel this is, but when my wife, Alexis, is the best thing that ever, and this isn't just bullshit husband talk, the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. I mean, just saved my life. And there was a whole group of friends that stopped talking to me just because I, in their mind, I suppose, became an adult and they didn't want to be an adult, I guess. I don't know what the deal was. But I struggled with that for a long time. And honestly, interactions like that are what sent me into therapy in the first place. Not that I was sent in, like I'm just a big ball of tears crawling into a therapist's office, but that's what things like that time period are what finally made me realize, like, hey, I should go talk to someone, because, like, why am I so affected by this? And it took time and distance, but I've had friendships fall through, and I've been betrayed by people since then, or whatever the case may be, in theater especially. And one thing I found is when you do the work that you're doing and that I've been doing as well, when those things happen, they affect you. They probably affect you just as strongly, but for a lot less time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get past it quicker because when you really work on yourself and you start to get to know yourself for the first time for real,
Mm-hmm.
you realize that people's actions don't have fuck all to do with you, and they have everything to do with them. And who they are. So when people abandon you like that, doesn't mean that you deserved it, or doesn't mean that you're less than, or that you did anything. It just means that that's what they did for themselves, and that's whatever their opinion is, probably none of your business anyway.
Yeah, it's basically, like I said, it's just I'm still like curious of like what exactly the disconnect was, but I'm no longer in the idea of like, oh, like we could figure this out and be friends, even like we were very close for many, many years, like going back to middle school.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just kind of learn that, hey, sometimes you are friends for a long time, but then something happens where you just go different paths. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah. Sometimes people are in your life. I mean, that was a long one, but sometimes people are just in your life for a season, and, as someone who's sought therapy and counseling, that, not everyone's going to be the same level of mental health and awareness as you are. I mean, not everyone's going to realize or be able to handle things that you, as an emotionally responsible person, will understand. That they're not at the same level that you might be emotionally. They might think that, like, it's just easier just to ghost you, when really it's like, man, that hurts worse. I wish you just say, like, I don't want to talk to you anymore because of this. And it's like, great, at least then I'd know. Right? I mean, I've had this happen just even recently. I was friends with someone for about 8 years, and we worked together for years. And I don't know what the hell happened, but I mean, just went scorched earth, F me. And I have no clue. I'll never know, because you can't expect the truth from people who lie to themselves,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to sound like Gary Busey now, like an insane person. But I mean, that's just the shit you learn in therapy. You start learning these little mantras and these little ways to categorize things, just to help them make more sense in your brain.
All right, we've gone longer than I originally expected, but we still have to end things with the Fave 5 questions.
Hey, this is Booker T, 5-time champ, and this is the Fave 5 questions. Now, can you dig it?
I'm going to start off with this one. You got a little bit of both. When it comes to pizza, what's better, Chicago style or New York style?
New York style. I lived in Chicago. I'm in Chicago right now. I lived in Chicago for a very long time. I will tell you that 9 times out of 10, if you go to a place in Chicago that's not Lou Malnati's or a tourist place, you're probably going to see New York style pizza.
I've been to Illuminati's. The only place in Chicago that I had pizza was there, and the big chain I've had Giordano's. Actually, I think twice, maybe once or twice. Sadly, we had one.
I'm not gonna say people in Chicago don't eat that deep dish sauce on the top bullshit, but like, it's a tourist thing. Like, you just, pizza's good pizza's good pizza. And most of us New York style.
Question number 2. Let's go with MCU or Star Wars.
Oh, Star Wars, man, that might not be popular. I mean, I grew up with both, especially in like the mid late '90s. I was crazy into both, but I fell out of the MCU quick. Like,
Really?
I stopped watching all the movies before Avengers was over, but Avengers Endgame was the last Marvel movie that I watched, and it's not through any fault of theirs or my own. It's just like I'm just way more interested in Star Wars. Every Star Wars show, I don't complain about any of them. I love all of them. I know people give shit to like Boba Fett and stuff like that. I don't care. Make a million seasons of it. I'll watch every second.
I feel like that's how I am with the MCU because I've been on this boat since right after Iron Man and Hulk came out. Like I didn't go see them in the theaters. Like when they hit Blu-ray, I watched them and then I was like, oh, cool. Like I'm in on this. And I've been watching, I think I've seen every MCU movie in the theater except for Ant-Man. And that's just because at that point in my life, I wasn't able to make it to a theater at that point to go, which sucked because I really wanted to go see it. But other than that, all in the theater, I watch all the shows, love the shows. And like, I know there's people out there like, oh, I'm getting, superhero fatigue. And I'm like, you know what? I get that. But for me, it's like, I'm just continuing with the story. And that's one thing that I thoroughly enjoy about it. And I've never really been big into Star Wars. Like I've often called myself like that, like real casual type of Star Wars person. Kind of like when someone's really into sports and like they're sniffing out there, and a lot of times it'd be the wife. Like they know like certain things, they can watch the games, but like they're not like real dieharded. That's kind of like me. I've been like that with the movies. They didn't really get into the shows, but like I've watched all the movies at least once, some more, especially like I know I've seen the original trilogy a handful of times, but I've never been like diehard.
I think the Marvel stuff is purposely made to be broader. I know they're trying that with Star Wars, but you can hop into Marvel at any age. Yeah. The thing about Star Wars is my wife has seen all of she has seen all of the 20 years later, I'm still doing Borat. All of the new Star Wars stuff, but I refuse. I mean, not that I let her, but I mean, like, she was like, hey, should we watch the original ones? I was like, no, like you should not watch the prequels. You should not watch the originals because you are a 40-year-old woman and you you have to watch that when you're 11 or it's dog shit. And I'm not saying they're bad movies. I'm just saying, like, if you don't have that 9-year-old nostalgia for like Star Wars or whatever, then it's like, what the fuck is this movie?
Question number 3, and this is also kind of links because you're in Chicago, but how do you feel about ketchup on hot dogs?
I'm fine with it. It's not my choice. It's not my go-to necessarily. But I know that the whole deal here is like the Wrigley dog with mustard or whatever. Listen, not a mustard fan, dude. Like it's not for everybody. I think ketchup is fine. I probably put ketchup on more things than I'd care to admit. But for me, as far as hot dogs go, I like any place that has like any kind of like sauce or whatever it's called, like that chili type sauce or whatever. Anything that's like special, they want to toss some relish on there, that's fine. But just mustard. Are you high? Like, that's unbelievably weird to me.
Yeah. There's people out there that love mustard, and I'm like, I can eat it on things, but there has to be like another condiment. I don't care what it is. Like, it has to be something.
Exactly the same. If it's in something or it's in Congress with something else, okay, I could. Well, be fine. But if it's just like, here's your fries and here's your mustard, what?
I always have fun with people from Chicago when, obviously they're so anti ketchup, and I'm just like, yeah, in my area, there's a place that actually puts Fruit Loops on a hot dog, and they're just like, what? what are you talking about? And I'm talking about, for those who don't know, Happy Dog, which was right by Mount Carmel, and it's just like, yeah, like their big signature thing is Fruit Loops on a hot dog. Like, is that better for you? Or is that too much?
I say live your life. I say go for it. If you want to have Fruit Loops and mustard, whatever you want.
I never tried Happy Dog, but I do want to try that at least once, because that
I feel like I'd try a bite of it. I feel like if I bought a whole one, I'd feel like an idiot because I'd probably be like, yeah, this is not for me.
All right, question number 4. Best physical portrayal of the Joker.
Oh, I mean, I guess if you're just looking at like what's the most epic feeling, like what's the most iconic, I suppose, like if you're taking the long lens of history 100 years from now when they look back at Batman, if they look back at Batman, what would it be? I mean, I think it's hard not to say Heath Ledger. I think that's probably about as perfect as like that type of Joker gets. But for me as a kid, you know, Jack Nicholson and Cesar Romero were always the Joker for me. But again, they're more the goofy style. So I think the Joker it's kind of why I fell off of Marvel a little bit, just because I've always liked the comics, and I feel like the movies became a little action movie and less and not really comic book. They hit it for a little while and then they kind of lost me. It's the same with some of the Batman stuff where it's like Heath Ledger to me is like the Joker from the comics.
Yeah. Did you see the Batman?
Yeah.
What did you think about that? I enjoyed it because
I really liked it. Yeah,
it felt like this just different style for Batman. Like they finally dived in more. Like Batman's a really good detective, and we don't really highlight it as much. I know no one's trilogy did, but like we're gonna like amp it up and like say like this is like some early Batman, not this seasoned veteran.
That's what I used to buy. That's what when I was a kid, I used to get Detective Comics all the time. I'm always been a big Batman fan, but Detective Comics I liked a little better because they focused more on him being like that detective, which is the Batman that I like the best. But for my money, though, I know this wasn't the question. Michael Keaton's my Batman. Sorry.
I kind of stick with the Nolan trilogy of like Joker and Christian Bale, but like I can't really ever knock not Heath Ledger, but Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton. Like those are very iconic.
I think Batman Returns is one of the best movies ever made. It's like when people talk about perfect movies, like they always use Princess Bride and stuff like that. I think if you sat and analyzed Batman Returns, you'd see it's a perfect hero story.
I'm gonna say it's an underrated sequel.
Oh, for sure.
Like the original Batman or Batman 1989 as it's been called now. There's a lot like that's really great about that. Even the fact of freaking the soundtrack is all Prince. Like it's like it's a Prince album. Yeah, like I finally picked up a physical copy of that album not too long ago. Like that is like really cool, and like there's a lot of it that's iconic, and I think because that movie is so great that a lot of people do look past Batman Returns, but really like Batman Returns is at minimum on at least the same level. It's just, I
mean, for it to pull off two villains in a movie, which has been proven to be done successfully after that, but also done very unsuccessfully after that, to perfectly pull off two villains is just amazing.
You know, a lot of people hate on Batman and Robin, but there's a lens that someone, I can't remember exactly who, it might have been BJ Colangelo, I can't exactly remember, but basically saying Batman and Robin is more of a homage to the 60s series.
Sure.
And if you look at it from that, it's like, oh, okay, like that actually makes that movie like better than I originally thought. Is it better than the first two? No. But like it puts it in like a way better light. And I'll always say too, not Val Kilmer, George Clooney is an underrated Bruce Wayne.
Oh, sure. He's great.
I mean,
he was a better Bruce Wayne than Batman. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like some of the actors are better at one part of the role than the other. Like I think George Clooney was a good Batman, but not a great Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. All right. Question number 5: Step Brothers or Talladega Nights?
Oh, Jesus. I haven't watched either one of those in a long time. I think if I went to a cabin with my family and I'm like, there's no cable and there's no TV and no internet, and they're like, okay, there's a DVD player and a TV and there's 2 DVDs and one is Step Brothers and one is Talladega Nights. Which one do you want to watch? I think I'd say Step Brothers. Just That's my instinct. I don't know that I have a good reason for that, but that's the one I would be like, fine, let's watch Step Brothers.
I mean, this is one of those questions that everybody has their own reasoning behind it. Like for me, I enjoy both, but I go with Talladega Nights came first, so it felt a little bit more fresh, but also just like adding that comedy into the NASCAR world,
sure,
just bumps it up a little bit more for me. But like both are very good, both are hilarious, and I would never fault anybody for saying Step Brothers. Like they're both really good.
Well, there's good actors in both. Like Gary Cole is in Talladega Nights, but what's his name who plays the dad in Step Brothers is brilliant as well.
Oh yeah, I mean I was even like really thinking about a lot of the sporting players, but yeah, like there's just they're both like highly quotable. Like
yeah,
everybody has their favorite line from both, or favorite lines from both.
Just don't put in Anchorman 2. I think that might have been the worst movie I ever saw in the theaters.
Really? Okay.
And I saw the Halle Berry Catwoman in theaters, and I still think it was better than Anchorman 2.
The worst movies I've ever seen in the theater is, and I say this because they're the only two movies I ever fell asleep during. Rango and The Green Lantern.
I haven't seen Green Lantern, but I did fall asleep during The Manchurian Candidate when I took a girl on a date and she didn't go back out with me again because she was pissed. I woke up, I fell asleep, and it really probably didn't have much to do with the movie. I was just tired probably from working, but I woke up and she was just staring at me with her arms crossed like she was like a cartoon. We were like 18 and she's like staring at me like the Lockhorns or whatever, like the Sunday cartoon strips. And she never called. She didn't answer my text ever again.
Yeah, for me, I think it was like my work schedule at the time, which affected my sleep schedule because I was working 12s, and it was 6 at night to 6 in the morning, and do the regular like 2 on, 2 off, 3 on, whatever, like that whole thing for 2 weeks. And it would be like, I would wake up and me and my ex would like go to the movies. And like those were 2 of the movies that we watch movies for, but I swear, we watched more than those 2, and I didn't have an issue. And I've never had that feeling of like, I should really go back and rewatch Green Lantern. I feel like I'm missing something. I'm like, no, I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I got it.
All right. Question number 6 that I always tailor around my guests. I want to know who your Mount Rushmore of SNL actors are.
I've never thought about this before, so I'm going to have to think out loud a little bit. Norm Macdonald is number 1 for sure. I mean, in no particular order, but Norm Macdonald's on there, no doubt. I know his run on SNL wasn't the longest, and he mostly just did Weekend Update. I know he did, obviously a few other famous sketches, but like Jeopardy and stuff like that. But when SNL, I was the perfect age, maybe a little young, just a little young, but I was just about the perfect age in the late 90s, mid 90s, whatever, when SNL got really popular. And it was Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan and everything. And I was probably just a shade too young to really, I mean, not that I didn't get the sketches, but like they just didn't appeal to me as much as they would a few years later. Mm-hmm. But I was always excited for Weekend Update with Norm. And when he left and it was Colin Mockery, no offense to Colin, I was just like devastated. Norm Macdonald to me is just my favorite SNL cast member ever. I mean, my SNL time period is from that late 90s era and then reruns from the early 90s that were on Comedy Central. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, Chris Farley, that's another one. Just a total force, man. Just amazing. Not Rob Schneider. I don't know why he popped in my head. Norm Macdonald, Chris Farley. Again, I think people are going to be pissed about this one, or anyone who cares what my opinion is. I think David Spade is up there for me. Like, again, you can tell the period that I watched. Let me see if he makes the final cut here in my brain. I think I have to include, even though I don't always love everything he does, I think I have to include Will Ferrell on there. So I got Norm, Chris Farley, Will Ferrell. Let me think here. Oh, what the hell am I thinking? Cecily Strong. She's brilliant. Yeah. All right. So Sorry, I'm reshuffling the deck here a little bit. So Norm, Chris Farley, Cecily Strong. I'm trying to think of a more modern-ish era person. Oh, probably Bill Hader. There you go. There it is. There's the 4. That's perfect.
We overlap on 3. We overlap.
All right.
Yeah. Farley's my number 1. Like I grew up idolizing Farley. Like I know I always have to like preface, especially when I was in school, I'm like, he's my comedic idol. Like not the drug aspect of him, like what he did on SNL when I was in high school. I tried to do the same thing in drama club.
Yeah. Falling through tables and shit.
Oh, like seriously, like if I found like a way to fall down, like I would do it.
Yeah.
Or
I mean, he's still a legend here in Chicago. His picture's all over Second City, even in the back. I mean, he's just like, he's still an absolute legend here.
Like the funny thing about him, and it's ironic when you know the truth, because of Chris Farley on SNL, outside of being a Browns fan, I am a Bears fan.
There you go. If
you know anything about Chris Farley in real life, he was a Packers fan. So
yeah,
I found that out later in life, and I was like, oh, well, too late. So yeah, Farley.
It's sad that it's not 5 because I would put Phil Hartman on there too. But I feel good about my picks.
Bill Hader, another one we overlap on. Like that dude is one of the best impressionists ever.
He's a chameleon. Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. I'm not going to say that I love every sketch he's ever been in, but just the breadth of what he's able to do is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. And he didn't always do like some of his impressions weren't always up like modern. Like the fact that in the 2000s or, whenever his exact run was, he was doing Alan Alda. Like how many people like around my age knew who Alan Alda was? Like, I mean, I only know him from MASH, but still like when I hear the impression, I'm like, oh, that's really good. Like that's really sounds like him. The last one we overlap on is Cecily Strong. I think
she's amazing.
Oh my, like I fell in love with her when she did the girl at the party you don't want to start a conversation with.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of got upset when they moved her to Weekend Update full time because, like, well, now I'm not going to see that character anymore. Like that gets thrown out the window. But it was though everything they did with it was hilarious. Even go back to Weekend Update with Bill Hader and Stefan. Like the first time I saw that, I'm like, this is great. And every time they would bring it back, like it was so good. And then they found other ways to like incorporate other things. Like for example, just when Seth Meyers was gone, there was always these lines that Bill Hader would have towards those of the whoever filled in, especially one like he would always hiss at Cecily Strong. Or at least one time he did. Like, oh, just so good. But even going back to Cecily, like I felt like she's so underrated.
I agree. And that's honestly, and I'm not even trying to make this one of those type conversations, but it's because she's a woman. I mean, that's literally it.
Oh, yeah.
I as someone, I've worked extensively in comedy for a long time, but most especially the last like 4 years, or plus 4 or 5 years. I mean, some of the most brilliant people I've ever met here in Chicago or that came out of Chicago have been women, and they're almost never referenced, that's why.
Before I get to my last one, I'll say the honorable mention, and it's a woman, is Kate McKinnon. Like,
oh my God, yes, you're right. Holy shit,
she's another one that she could do anything, and like when she did the Ellen stuff for a while, like that was so spot on.
Yeah.
A lot of people hate on the movie, but I'm like, I'm a huge fan of the franchise, and I don't hate it. But her and Ghostbusters, like her and Leslie Jones together, like made me fall in love. And I'll openly say, like, I was never a huge Leslie Jones fan, and it wasn't anything against her. Like for me, she was the female Tracy Morgan.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to qualify it. Like, I don't think Tracy Morgan's for everybody either. I think Tracy Morgan was brilliant.
Oh yeah, well, I mean,
I could see how people wouldn't think that he was funny.
I mean, I like Tracy Morgan, but it was like she was just kind of being that to me. Well, like it just maybe didn't seem as fresh or whatever. But when I saw the Ghostbusters movie and like any part that was Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones going back and forth, it was hilarious because they were like these two completely different characters interacting with each other, and they were just, it was just so great.
You know who's another one who should be up there in the conversation? Mia Rudolph.
Yes.
Jeez,
yes.
Phenomenal.
I think my last one would, I kind of want to go David Spade. I like that David Spade had, he had his own like knockoff Weekend Update that like Spade in America. And like, that was just as funny.
Well, like why I like Spade is the same reason, Jerry Seinfeld was endearing on Seinfeld, because David wasn't the best actor, but like that's what made it funny. It's almost like he was he was a very good straight man and stuff, like with Farley, because it's just like he's not the strongest like character actor, so he got to be like a grounded, because it's hard to be. I'm a straight man, and if you put me in a sketch, that's probably the best spot for me, because it's very very it just comes a little naturally to me, but it's very difficult to be a straight man who's also funny. And David Spade was a straight, like a straight man who was actually also really, really hilarious.
Mm-hmm. And I don't care what a lot of people say. Like, I know that Black Sheep kind of was.
I love it.
I would say it's a lesser Tommy Boy, which I love. The Tommy Boy's in my top 5 movies of all time.
But I feel the same way about Star Wars. I wish they would have made 10 Tommy Boys. Like, I don't care. Yeah. I love it.
Like Black Sheep is still fun. It still has like things that I love, like just anything like Vote for Donnelly. Like, I still crack up about, or the headbutt with
another
the
underrated
packet.
one is almost Heroes, or almost Heroes.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched that one. I have to revisit that one and Beverly Hills Ninja, because I haven't watched those in a long time. I was more of a Tommy Boy and Black Sheep fan. But I should say not. I was against the other two. It's just I know I had Tommy Boy on VHS, and I think I seen Black Sheep enough on like HBO.
Yep, same. I had the same.
All right, yeah, we went way longer than I expected. But any final thoughts or last minute plugs before we go?
No, I guess that was the 6 out of 5. That was the Shucky Ducky. I guess I guess we did it. We made it.
Yeah.
If you made it this far in the podcast, congrats. We talked for a long time. This is what always happens to me. I just talk to people for a long, long time. But not going to put too fine of a point on it. I feel like I know you're on your own journey, but I feel like we'll be back here again someday, and we'll have to talk some more.
You want to throw out your social media for those who don't know?
At the Magnum CK on Twitter, while it still is around, and on Instagram, I am at Cult of Personality with an A, not with an E, like Pepsi Phil. Cult of Personality. I share shows and I share, ticket links and stuff like that. And sometimes I get bored and share some silly things on Twitter, but Instagram is usually a little more about my actual life from time to time. But yeah, I don't have a lot to plug other than old wrestling, AIW, the usual places. I'm starting up with Rise Wrestling again and outside of Pittsburgh. We got all kinds of stuff we're cooking. But yeah, just watch Eddie Kingston win the G1.
That's what I'm hoping for. And also, I didn't realize that Eddie Kingston did commentary on your retirement match or matches.
Yeah. Eddie, I don't want anyone to remind him, but I once threw Eddie out of a gauntlet battle royal. So I've thrown out the NJPW Strong Champion before. So who's the real champion? And I love Eddie to death. I hope our paths cross again. He's one of the greatest, most genuine, most passionate people. He is the Terry Funk and Mick Foley of the 21st century, and he is getting exactly what he has earned, and I'm so happy to see it. It was 3 a.m. here, or 2 a.m. in Chicago, and I was watching him beat Shingo, and I was fucking losing it. I was so happy. I'm going to put that on again. Now that you said that, I'm going to watch my buddy Eddie beat Shingo again. But there are lots of people who are getting what they deserve right now. I would say, Max has worked his ass off, and to see him on top in AEW. Adam Cole, he's a wonderful guy, worked his ass off. Seeing him on top is great. Danhausen, all these people. I mean, there's so many people that, you know, came to AEW or mainstays, or that I know from IWC in Pittsburgh or whatever. There's people that I know who are getting what they've earned, and Eddie is the one that's like, and I don't mean this disparagingly, but Eddie's a mutt. You know what I mean? He's a mutt dog, and I just love it when an underdog just kicks ass, and he deserves it. I love him.
And of course, you can find myself at jsummers330 on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Hive, and Threads. Much like you can find the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers, Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers, and Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. Email, if you so choose to desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. Like I said earlier in the show, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this fine podcast. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, or Podbean, WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. All those links can be found in the link tree in our show notes. But I'll be honest, with the show ending soon, does it really matter? I don't know, but that's just me. But you can check out our other podcast friends, such as Hiya Pussy, a wrestling adjacent podcast, super fantastic podcast, It's Evolution, baby, the IndieCast, Sobros Network, Biff Radio, Game Marks Podcast, Powerbomb Jitsu, Pile Driver Podcast, Fully Posable, Positively Pro Wrestling, Indie Wrestling Guide, If You Catch My Grift, Marks with Mikes, Juggalo Rewind, 20x20 Rewind, X Over, and This Ends at Prom. Check out our other non-podcasting friends such as The Mystery Men, Redline Radio, Mouse's Wrestling Adventure, VHS Party Tonight on Instagram, and connected to that, Danger Zone Video in Juliet, Tennessee, ran by our friend Righteous Jesse, Heart of Gold, Toy Hi-Yo Toy Show, Time Capsule Toys, Smokin' Jace Barbecue, 20x20 Apparel, JCP Designs, Midwest Territory, if it still exists, Southern Underground Pro, and the official graphic designer of Wrestling Cheers, Moy Boy Designs. That will do it for us here on Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, and we're at wrestling, and so can you. Later.
It's the Wrestling Cheers. Get up on your feet, brightening your day in the middle of the week. And you gotta love the show. Yeah, you know it holds a title for the best podcast talking wrestling in Ohio. Finishing a cold one, take a load off. We ain't all about the prohibition like Josh, so we cheers. And then we sit back. Other shows are in the trash, kinda like they Nick Stapp. Like the name is Matt Justice, wearing all the gold. Wrestling Cheers is coming to a close. The #1 podcast going in the game. And one day everybody's gonna know the name. It's the Wrestling Cheers. This is Platinum Max, signing off. Ohio, good night. The world, good night. We love you. We'll see you next week.